Well, Christianity was developing its understanding of who Jesus was in the continent, particularly in Eastern Europe and Greece and Turkey. It was also spreading. Tertullian in the 3rd century writes, by this time the varied races of the Gaetulians and the manifold confines of the Moors, all the limits of the Spains and the diverse nationals of the Gauls, and the haunts of the Britons, inaccessible to the Romans, but subjugated to Christ, and of the Sarmatians and Dacians and Germans and Scythians, and of many remote nations, and of provinces and islands, many to us unknown, and which we can scarce enumerate. But was Tertullian perhaps overplaying his hand? Is there really evidence that Christianity had reached the far-flung haunts of the Britons by the 3rd century? Well, actually, there is. If you ever get to Manchester University Museum, you can see this fragment of a tile which was found in the excavations of the Roman fort in Manchester. It's dated to 182 AD. Very tight dating for archaeologists, but they're absolutely convinced of it by the nature of the layers it's been found in. Well, why am I arguing that this is evidence that Christianity was here? It's a bit of tile with a few words on it. Rota, opera, we don't quite know what it goes on for sure, but this is very similar to a form of code, if we will, that was found in various different places in the Roman Empire at this stage. Mostly it's found in the form of the sator square, sator arepo tenet operas rotas. But it's also found in the rotas form, as we can see from the Manchester fragment. Say Arepo, the farmer, holds the wheels as he works, is the best anyone can get to for a translation of it. But since it can be in the other form, starting with rotas, the meaning's clearly not the point. So how do we uncode this square? Well, what you need to do is get a piece of paper and write out the letters. Now, take out 2 A's and 2 O's and double the N. If you want to do this for yourself, do pause the video and do that, just to check what I'm saying is so. Once you've done that, you get this string of letters. If you were to write it out, and every time you get to a double, you would put the double underneath the previous version, you'd find you'd get this particular string of letters twice. Now, can you rearrange those into a well-known Latin phrase? Again, pause the video and give yourself a moment to do that. If you can, you'll find you get the word paternoster. Actually, you can arrange the letters like this as a cross, paternoster, hence only one N with an extra A and O and O and A. This is the most convincing way of understanding the sator square, although people have tried to explain it in other ways. They were particularly perturbed when one was found in the ruins of Pompeii. Actually, 2 were found there, one on a bit of plaster and one scrawled on a wall, actually on a pillar of the gymnasium, because they thought, how could possibly Christianity have got to Pompeii by 79 AD? But we know it was in Rome before then, so why not Pompeii? It seems to have spread pretty well and pretty fast. And so we have a sator square, or rotas version, in Manchester in 182. We know Christianity was here when Tertullian was claiming it had got here. There's also a 2nd century fragment of plaster found in Cirencester, which also has the Rotas version on it. So it's not just in Manchester, but in Cirencester. When we get into the 3rd century, we find more significant evidence. This is a collection of silver, which you can find in the British Museum. Please do go and look at it. It's most awesome, in my opinion. If you go into room, I think it's 49, it's there, the Wharton Newton collection. It's at Roman Britain. The bowl, which is found in Wharton Newton, it was a Roman town called Dobryvae, which was where Ermine Street crossed the River Nene. And from the form, particularly of the flagon, which you'll see there on the right, it has all been dated to the 3rd century. The bowl has the inscription Sanctum altera tuam domine subnixus honoro, and has the name Publianus on the base. So if you put this together, you get, O Lord, I Publianus, relying on you, honour your altar. The words are between 2 kairos. And you'll also see an array of tokens. These were quite common in Roman times to be left in temples, but these ones clearly are Christian. Cairo, Alpha, Omega. This is before the point at which the Roman Empire formally accepted Christianity as a recognized religion, and yet it had a church here in Britain. Again, a little bit later, in the beginning of the 4th century, we find the remains at Silchester, which was the Roman Caleva. Silchester is a village about 10 miles south of Reading, and a building with an apsoidal building, was found there. It did have a mosaic, but the mosaic had no pictures on it. And this seems to be a common sign of a church, a Christian church, following on the idea from Judaism of not depicting God and therefore not depicting other characters within a church. And the Museum of Reading has made that reconstruction. So before Christianity was proclaimed across the whole empire, certainly not that long after it had been accepted by Constantine as his religion, we have a church in Silchester. Again, in the 4th century, we've discovered a church at St Paul of the Bell in Lincoln, an apsoidal church. Churches of this period are also being found in Colchester and elsewhere. Villa churches we have, so in the left of there, Hinton St Mary, with a figure perhaps of Constantine, perhaps of Christ, with the Cairo. And Lullingston, again, if you go to the Roman Britain section of the British Museum, you can see that reconstructed, pieced together plaster from the villa there in Lullingston, which is in Kent, just off the M25. Portable objects have been found. And so here we have from the Trapper-in-Law hoard that was found on the Trapper-in-Law, which is an ancient hill fort site in southern Scotland, about 20 miles west of Edinburgh. It's thought that it's hack silver, having been used to pay off the Scottish tribes, although the intact nature of some of the pieces makes me wonder whether it's possible that actually some of it was being used in worship in Trapper-in-Law itself. It's not unlikely that Christianity had got that far. and then a lead tank, which was used for baptisms, which has a Cairo on it. You can't see that clearly from this. Again, go to the British Museum and you can see it there from Icklingham in Suffolk. In fact, 6 such lead tanks have been found in different places. And if you look at a map, you can see that Christian artifacts are found all over ancient Christian Britain. Not many artifacts, to be sure, but widespread. Christianity, by the end of the 4th century into the 5th century, as the Roman Empire withdrew from Britain, was well established in the west and in the east of the country.